Count Cagliostro, sentenced to life imprisonment for witchcraft and heresy in 1791, though in fact he was more a con artist than a witch. He was born Giuseppe Balsamo in the slums of Palermo, Sicily in 1743. He grew up a juvenile delinquent and petty criminal, likely to end a short and squalid life in Palermo, Gaul. Except at the age of 25, he managed to get to Rome to better his station in life. In Rome, he met, seduced, and eventually married a pretty 14-year-old girl, Lorenzo Felciani, daughter of a small shopkeeper in the poorer part of the city. Together they traveled widely through Europe, visiting London, Paris, Naples, Venice, Spain, Belgium, Switzerland, and as far as Algiers in North Africa. They existed from hand to mouth by working confidence tricks on anyone with money, forging letters of credit, and when times were hard, Lorenzo would outrightly seduce customers and take their money. During his visit to Spain, he came to an idea, a vision, that he was some kind of magician, although still again more con artist than so. Visiting London for a second time in 1777, Giuseppe became a Freemason. He promoted himself to Count Alessandro Cagliostro, and Lorenzo became Countess Serafina. His initiation in Freemasonry set Giuseppe thinking about the advantages to be gained from the practice of black magic. Continuing his travels with Lorenza, he managed to become initiated into the Rosicrucians and into the Illuminati. He settled in Paris and set up his own lodge of Egyptian rites of Freemasonry. Statues of old Egyptian gods stood about the rooms of the house he rented. The servants were dressed as Egyptian slaves. Giuseppe made a good deal of money by giving seances, advice, looking into the future for people, and by practicing the other techniques of magicians. This most prosperous part of his life came to an abrupt end when he became the mark of a confidence trick himself played on Queen Marie Antoinette. A diamond necklace worth a huge sum of money was supposed to be delivered to her, but never was. When the dupe jeweler turned up for his money, a scandal broke. Cardinal Rohan Giammani, who was in love with the Queen, was implicated, and Giuseppe was arrested. He was acquitted at his trial, but ordered to leave France. Back in Rome in 1790, he quarreled with Lorenza, who denounced him to the Inquisition as a sorcerer. He was arrested and interrogated closely about his beliefs and activities. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and sent to the fortress at St. Leo, in the mountains of the northern Italy. He died 5 years later at the age of 52, probably of just his own madness. He had many different things and enemies and demons in his own mind. The soldiers of the garrison buried his body outside the walls in an unmarked grave that is still sought after to this day. For he who drinks from the skull of Cagliostro is said to gain supernatural powers. Lorenza was kept confined in a convent by the Inquisition for the rest of her life. She was ever pining for him, even though she had denounced him. In the district of Tarasvir, where she had grown up and where she had met Giuseppe, the date of her death was never recorded. This is the Pentacle-Hours. We broadcast from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. CST, Central Standard Time, I think that is. I believe that's what it is, or Illuminati Standard Time. Does Illuminati Standard Time exist? I don't know. I guess it would exist here in the center of a pentacle where all convergence occurs in time and space. And that is what a pentacle is to mean. Pentacle in magic in all types from the periods of the medieval ages or whenever it was established in several thousand years ago, was a force in how it came about was through its circular nature, the 5 points representing the earth, water, fire, air, and then the elementals of universal power would come into conjunction. So through certain incantations, tetragrammaton, grammatized in Latin, and all these series of other codes, you could break the fabric of reality and summon things or open a gate or a doorway to another dimension. A lot of the pentacle concepts, though, in my opinion, in a psychometric nature, are to open the mind, to, through the utilization of your own mind, as the pentacle, as an accoutrement, as a gate, as a doorway, and the 5 points, or the 5 cardinal points, you could enter into another states of existence. And it's all really kind of interesting. And through meditation and magical conjuration, it is said that in that ethereal gate, you could open dimensions to other realities. And it's odd because as we progress in our science, we're learning more and more about vibrations and string theory and how fabrics and veils and dimensions are kind of interlucid or interlaced. And I think sooner or later, as science progresses, we'll be able to actually quantify, pentacle usage, conjurations through certain vibrational tones, Enochian and codes and languages, in order to break more down of the scientific nature of how it would work in a conjuration aspect or a summoning, or to step through into another dimension. And a lot of alien activity is attributed to this, that they are somehow able to bend space and time to open doorways or gates similar to triangles and things that exist here on Earth, like the triangle right outside my window on Michigan, not Michigan Avenue, but just outside in the water out there. There is a porthole, I believe, with all the streaming evidence of different aircraft and boat disappearances, and little tourists that go out swimming every now and then out in that turgid water that vanish without a trace. And these things, with GPS, you think would become more rare. But disappearances of aircraft and boats and things still commonly occur all the time. And people just don't understand it. Most of it is targeted at civilian things and aircrafts, but it does happen to large-scale government things as well. But the pentacle being an aperture to another reality, and I think triangulation of certain conjurations could bring about a summoning and a powerful force that could carry a magician, a black magician, or any kind of focused witchery activity into another realm. I received an email about my celebrity show again. I don't know if I mentioned it during that show, but it was in regards to someone referring to the fact that I called out that there were actually 4 women that really ran Hollywood as opposed to some old dude who sits behind a desk. And I can pretty much tell you that, yeah, it's 4 showrunner women that run the show in Hollywood. I mean, in certain aspects of Hollywood. And he was goading me to call them out. I guess I will. It's not a negative thing. One is Sue Kroll. She's a president of worldwide marketing and international distribution at Warner Brothers. And she's known to wear black Lanvin dresses, if you can afford that. The next one is Trisha Cardosa. She's an executive VP Corporate Communications at Showtime. She is modern, high and low, and mixing vintages of clothes. And all of these women are really into their clothes, by the way. Sue Fleischman is Executive VP Worldwide Corporate Communications and Public Affairs for other Warner Brothers Entertainment aspects. And then Sharon Klein, 20th Century Fox TV executive, casting, and talent. And she definitely stands out. All of them are kind of really interesting people. I deal with some mid-level people that don't even get to really get into interludes or contacts with any of those different women, but I am on the Discovery Channel's producer platform. So I get to interact with certain mid-level people, but not to their level. So if you're thinking there's like some old dude, behind a curtain anymore in Hollywood who is, pulling levers and things, that's long over. Hollywood is definitely, I feel, a woman's game. There are the banking aspects of it. Now, the bankers are different from the actual producers, or not even producers, people that actually call the shots and say this is going this and this is doing that. And I think that's what's adding to the good programming that's been occurring on cable networks. There's been a lot of it. I don't really watch a lot of television, but, people that are give me good feedback on things, and they share things with me and what's been going on in the world of television. And I just find it interesting. Some other feedback from yesterday's show in regards to intuition. One thing I left out about intuition, you can trust your intuition, and it's good. You get the feelings, and your instinct is very good to trust. But one thing from an aspect of a practitioner is that intuition can be manipulated. And this is kind of odd how this can happen. But if you are a practitioner of magic or projection or psychic influencing, you can sway someone. You can sway their intuition. So let's say you want to turn them off to some dude or something. You can sort of begin to put in cues or intuitive influences or interfere with an actual person's feelings through projection. And that's one thing that needs to be guarded against as well. So it's understood to reason it out along with intuition, so you're not being misled, especially if you're around people that practice, because you never know who's bringing intention in upon you. It's usually never known. And if something is suddenly shifting, if there's a sudden shift in your relationship, it could be religious oriented indoctrination or something. That's true. But your intuition is off, possibly, or it's being manipulated. Say you're really into somebody, and then all of a sudden you're not, or you're having your second thoughts, or you're conflicted or whatever, and your intuition is off. Well, quite likely your intuition is being vibrated upon or influenced. So, I don't think I really touched on that yesterday, but I think it's important to know. Remember to forget, with a line from Anne Sexton. Going before I arrive, breaking until broken. Reaching paradox wrapped in blackness, your own private deathbed, one world under hoof. Today is the day they shipped home our summer in 2 crates, and tonight is All Hallows Eve. And today you told me that the oak leaves outside my window will outlive you. But then love is where our summer died. Though I never touched your Waffen Luger, it was only one pull trigger away. When I was dying, my love burned beyond recognition. You were the light of my life that went out, a force that shocked me into the darkness of my existence. The pain was Golgotha. I do like poetry. That was written for me. I think the poetess surpasses me. She borrowed lines of my own work, intermeshed it with Anne Sexton's work, and embellished it with her own fervent power, her own magical, intuitive, with the written word. Probably by comparison, someone who would rival my own work. And poetry is really, one step away into other words and other aspects in delving in music, because all music is poetry as well. And I do want to do a show, probably, one day a week with poetry. I was talking with a friend last night and trying to goad her to come on and help me with the poetry aspect show. Not my friend Isabella, who I want to bring on as a philosophy and dream interpretation show. This is different. So I'm not going to name names, but do share a mutual ambition for the work of Anne Sexton. Anne Sexton, I think, is really a different kind of writer. She was definitely channeling her own demons. And she was very sexually active and all this kind of thing. And she wrote a lot about Satanism and witchcraft in a pseudo way, although she wasn't really a practitioner. And a lot of people label her just as some like molested drunk or something. And I think she's much more than that. And people that, give her that label are really just inept critics that have nothing to offer but nonsense. They're armchair people that, can't do anything for themselves. And that's what I really think about critics in general, that they, sit around and criticize everyone else, but what are they doing? What are they bringing to the table? Are they accomplishing anything? No, all they're able to do is bring some kind of critic thinking to, other people's work. And it's just not relevant. I was in a debate with some critic in New York recently, and going on about, this certain film is so horrible, and and he wants to slam it or something. And then I asked him, I said, well, what films are you doing? What films are you trying to accomplish in your own life? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I'm not a film person. I don't really do any kind of film. I just watch film. But when you call a critic out on that and you show their ineptitude, then you see the shallowness of their nature.
Her kind. I have gone out a possessed witch, haunting the black air, braver at night, dreaming evil. I have done my hitch over the plain houses, light by light, lonely thing, 12-fingered, out of mind. A woman like that is not a woman quite. I have been her kind. I have found the warm caves in the woods, filled them with skellets, carving, shells, closets, silks, innumerable goods. Fixed the suburbs for the worms and the elves, whining, rearranging the disalign. A woman like that is misunderstood. I have been her kind. I have ridden in your cart, Blossom, waved my nude arms at villages going by, learning the last bright roots, survival where your flames still bite my thigh, and my ribs crack where your wheels whine. A woman like that is not ashamed to die. I have been her kind.
It's a perfect example of her work. It was recorded in an American poetry thing in San Francisco. Quality wasn't that good, but it's very powerful. Very powerful. And that is just a touch of her. Not all of her work tinges into that level of witchcraft. She was dabbling into a lot of things. She was preeminent sexuality and intensity. And there was a lot of rumor milling going on about things later that came out after she died. And I don't really know anything about that. I'm not here to interview her daughters. I'm just purely looking at her work from the standpoint of a fellow writer. She definitely has, more to say than these average types that are everywhere, milling out this same 3 tired kind of tier. And when I go to these poetry readings, all of the people sound the same and they're all saying the same thing. And it's just ridiculous. It's just tired. And the state of poetry as it is now, it's a dying edict. I mean, it basically is dead. And if you are writing poetry, you have to do it for yourself. You have to do it so you yourself feel it. It's like with anything in the written art. Unless you're in the film like myself, who's churning out screenplays and selling them through the Writers Guild, and you have whatever going on, and you have an agent, and you're on a platform, and so on and so on. Then you can make money at what you're doing. But I love the screenwriting aspect as well. The creation on the front end of anything is the writing as the core. And poetry is the core of music, and it is a centrality to my world and to a few people in my life, not too many. It's getting rarer and rarer for me to interact with people that are saying, hey, I'm more of a poet than anything. Past few years, I may have met 1 or 2 people that are, saying that I'm more writing into poetry. A lot of people just down it, they say it's tired, and it is. It is dead art. It is a dead edict. It's not for everyone. And I got into it just at random chance. It was just something that I was trying in the 90s, and I realized that I could put words together and it would sound interesting. It would sound incantation. It would be, a powerful aspect of just total sojourn reality. Making more of things than the reality would offer me, in this one-dimensional existence. And I think that was my first step through the door of a new change in my own life. Because, life can be pretty empty and boring. And I personally was trying to fill it up with my own words and my own work. And I think that is the purpose behind it. I have mentioned this before, that people that get into writing, they get into it possibly to thinking, oh, we're going to make this X amount of dollars and there's going to be this golden rainbow at the end and things like that. Definitely not. Not in this current culture. It just doesn't exist. I mean, I had a friend of mine, and I have a lot of friends. I have a big network and blah, blah, blah. But, wanting to invest $5,000 in releasing her own chapbook and all this kind of thing. And she got mad at me when I said, don't do it. Just don't do that. And then she goes, well, why? You've written and you're doing all this stuff and your books are available on Amazon. And I just said, the easier way to do it, instead of self-publishing to that scant amount, because to be honest, you can produce 5,000 copies of your book, but you may only sell maybe 20. It's better to utilize CreateSpace or one-off publishers similar to that than trying to go out and publish these 5,000, piece diatribes, because it's not worth it anymore. Even if you are able to publish a book $1 or something, and I don't think you can. I think that's a pipe dream. She may have gotten 1,000 books for $5,000. So and if that, I don't even know. I mean, it all depends. If it was a 24-page chapbook, I don't know the parameters of the money, and I'm not, exact on all of that. But I had told her not to do it. I didn't want to be, a prick about it, but I just gave her my solid advice. But anyway, she went ahead, self-published, spent a lot of money. Not saying, I told you so, but she ended up only selling maybe 20 books, and the rest are shelved in her house in a box. And, she's kind of depressed about where she's going, in her writing and her things like that. And, I just said, hey, the way to try it, just next time, just view that as a learning lesson. Anyway, it's created a schism, and we basically don't really talk over something that petty. And we had some other issues, but, I'm not trying to be right about something. But if I see something, I'm going to be honest to that person. If I see them messing up, I'm going to say, hey, this is a little weird. You don't have to produce this amount of books. You're trying to balloon yourself up. And I think her work is great. I was one of the few people that bought her book, but, the best option for poetry in this state in 2014 is to do one-off publication. And yes, we all hate them as authors. I don't like them. The only one that I'm even vaguely fond of is CreateSpace. And I'm part of all of the different genres of one-off publishers. But Lulu screws the writer. They take money, and they're very rude, and they're never reachable, and they don't care about you. They don't care about you as a writer. The only thing the one that, as I said before, the only thing that is of interest that would even be vague in the approach as a writer to self-publish is the aspect of CreateSpace. And I like CreateSpace, even though they are an Amazon entity, and there's a constant slam on Amazon. But I can tell you that Amazon is really into the written word. Before they conduct a meeting, and I know shareholders in that business, and they're very rich, they read from these various books, just like I'm read to you every day on the Pentacle-Hours, something I choose to do, and it can be random, and I may not read, but I enjoy it. But during one of their meetings, they will read. They will read from the written word because they know that is the foundation of their business. They are booksellers. Despite what the common media theory is and the propaganda on their nonsense with they're saying Kindle means burn everything, and they really, look down at writing. That's not the case. They are a ruthless, huge corporation that is, on a whole cartel reality of driving business out of business. But all I am talking about is book vending in this aspect of that corporation. I'm not talking about their antics and their other things in dealing with their capitalistic ventures. And I'm not endorsing that. And I'm not endorsing really anything in regards to Amazon. I'm just saying that this is how my knowledge of what their interest is in the written word. It being that when they do conduct a reading, they will actually, not a reading, a meeting, they will read from books. And they each choose different things they'll read, and then they will begin their whole process of what their meeting entails. Because they enjoy it. And there's a lot of propaganda out there, and this is generally not public knowledge. I know because I know people that are involved with that. But their propaganda out there is that Amazon slams books and that they don't really are interested in. They're just using and driving out our publishers and so on and so on. I don't know about all that, but I do know that publishing is in a horrid state right now as far as trying to get your book published by Knopf or any of the big hitters, because they just don't read any of the work anyway. You can be a great writer and you're sending in your manuscripts and you're spending your money and your time, and they're not reviewing anything. They're not publishing anything. And the reason being is that because no one's buying anything in that regard anymore. That level is wiped out. And that level has been wiped out because the brick and mortar aspect has been wiped out on book selling. And that has a lot to do with Amazon as well, because they are driving things to be digital. One huge criticism of Amazon is in looking just at their format for the Kindle system. And it may not be Kindle. There are other formats as far as the different iPads or something that you can read off of. There's all kinds of different formats. Is that there is a formatting problem. You can upload your book and it will be perfect, and you will DPI it and it will have everything you need and everything will be perfect in that book. But when you upload it to their system, it gets convoluted. It gets skewed. It doesn't look right. I don't understand what's happening with that. That is a huge thing. They want everything to be digital, or they're moving it off of the digital. They're destroying the brick and mortar reality. But when you upload digitally, you're not getting a clear copy of your own book. There's bleed on pages. You've got stuff everywhere. There's something that occurs in the very transfer of the document, and that has to be sorted out. And they call it formatting upload. But you'd think if you had a PDF document, and these are major other publishers are having this problem with them, is that they'll go digital with Amazon and then they'll upload, their book, and it just ends up being a bunch of nonsense. Francois de Marchmart, or Marquise de Montespan, was born in 1641 of a well-to-do, though minor, family of French aristocrats during the reign of Louis XIII of France. She was baptized Francois, but never liked the name and changed it to Athenas, so that she could be called Athena. At the age of 19, she appeared at the court of Louis XIV as a maid of honor to his sister-in-law. Athena was extremely attractive, dark-haired, slightly dark-eyed, and a well-to-do figure. She was also clever, amusing, lively, and she loved company. When she was 22, her family arranged a marriage for her to the Marquis de Montespan, by whom she had 2 children in the first 4 years of their marriage. Louis XIV was still not 30 years old and had a voracious sexual appetite. Besides sleeping regularly with the Queen, his mistress at the time was Louis de Valliere, an unmarried young woman by whom he had 2 children and whom he had made a duchess. Athena determined to become the king's next mistress, and to this end she sought the advice of Catherine de Chaise, queen of the largest witch coven in Paris. Catherine de Chaise, known as La Voisin, told fortunes, sold beauty preparations, gave advice on how to make sexual activity occur, aphrodisiacs, and such things. And for ladies with urgent problems, she would be an abortionist. And also the problems or ambitions were more pressing, even that she could offer a great expense of very unusual aid of cursing and destroying people through black magic. In the garden of her house in the suburb of St. Denis, La Voisin had a pavilion fitted out as a chapel. The walls were hung with black. The padded altar was covered in black. It was here that the old gods could be approached on behalf of rich and fashionable ladies. Athena explained her ambition and paid her fee. La Voisin made the necessary arrangements, and one night soon afterwards, Athena bared her beautiful body to lay naked on the black altar, while Mariette performed a sacrifice of 2 doves over her, birds sacred from the earliest times of the goddess. A few months later, Louis was campaigning with his army and took Athena with him instead of his former mistress. He took her to bed and found her eminently more satisfactory. From then on, she was the royal mistress and very soon pregnant. She gave birth to a girl. Her second child by the king was a boy, and Louis made him the Duke of Maine. In 1673, she presented Louis with a third child. Her fortunes and those of her family prospered mightily as a result of the king's attention to her in bed. He built her a chateau of her own in Coligny, made her father the governor of Paris and her brother captain general of the royal galleys, in which appointment his own responsibility was to collect salary. Athena was making a fortune for herself, receiving a percentage of the taxes paid on all meat and tobacco sold in Paris. She also received worthwhile presents from those who wanted a word dropped to the king's ear. Louise, the discarded mistress, hung on at the court for a few years and then quietly vanished into a nunnery when she was 36. After 10 years of Athena, Louis began to cool slightly, and he told her to go and stay in her house at Coligny. Fearing that she was about to be replaced by someone younger, Athena went back to Lavoisin and her coven for advice and assistance. Obviously, something stronger was required this time. Lavoisin hired another priest and brought in more other people to the coven to say an office over her naked body on the altar. After a short time, she was summoned back to the king's bed. On the surface, all was well, but Louis was approaching his 40th birthday and was worried about his potency. Besides the queen and Athena, he started to bed every pretty woman he crossed his path, from the priestess of Sorbet to Athena's own sister, and even Athena's own maid. Athena was soon pregnant again, and this time it was another daughter, later to become the Duchess of Orleans. Being no fool, she was uneasy about the king's frame of mind. She was 37, had borne 6 children, and was losing her looks. The appearance at court of a new lady-in-waiting sent her into a panic. This was 17-year-old Marie Adelaide de Rochelle, Duchess of the Frontages, a beautiful redhead. Louis was clearly infatuated, and action was essential if Athena wished to avoid being pensioned off, as Louis before her had been. Louise. Twice already she had been laid naked on Lavoisin's altar and made an offering to the old gods. Both times her prayers had been answered. She was pregnant, but that meant little. So had Louise been when the king had dismissed her from his bed. Lavoisin gave great thought to the crisis and made the arrangements. The offering cost Athena half of her money. It took place in January 1678, and there is an eyewitness account. Surrounded by other members of the coven, Athena lay on the black altar naked. She lay at the right angles to its length, so that her knees were at its edge and her legs hung down from the front. Her arms were outstretched along the altar, and the top of each hand she held a lighted black candle. The ceremony was conducted by Guillaborg, a man who was brought in who was a high black magic practitioner, and Marguerite Deschays. The teen-age daughter of Lavoisin was present as well. The ritual followed the main lines of the Black Mass to perform and stood between Athena's knees so that her things were supposedly exposed. He stood in a chalice and a belly, addressed himself not to the Christian god, but to the great goddess, by the time of this being Astaroth, the horn god, by the name of Asmodeus. So clearly this is a satanic ritual. The names and actions indicate the purpose of the offering was to restore Athena's control over the king's sexual appetite, restore her to vigor, to vitality, and to youth. To consecrate the host, Guillaborg inserted it between his own open lips and began to kiss her. Not a violation, and pronounced the words, "Hoc est corpus meus," this is my body. So clearly there was some lustful Asmodeus going on for her. A very young child, especially procured from the slums of Paris, was brought to the altar by one of the coven and handed to Guillaborg. He held it upside down by its ankles over Athena and slit its throat so that the blood drained down into the chalice and over her. As in ancient times, a human life had been offered in return of granting of a request. The satanic priest wore a robe embroidered in pine cones and an old symbol of fertility, and resembles the tips of all kinds of phallic symbols. He handed the blood-filled chalice to Margaret Deshays, removed the host, hitched up the robe, penetrated Athena. Though elderly, I guess he was still going. He was very much involved in this sexual exhilaration and the blood and the darkness and the satanic rite. Later, as he still, the king, began to bed other women, Lavoisin was arrested in March of the next year by the Paris Inquisition. As soon as she heard the news, Athena flew into a panic to Paris to consult other inner members of the coven. Madame la Villastre. It did no good. Philastra and others were arrested and tortured. The members of the coven mentioned many names of the aristocrats who had been involved, and the police noted everything carefully for future investigation. Lavoisin told them a great deal, but she kept quiet about Athena and the king. But the brutal interrogation continued relentlessly. One of the male members, Lesage, blurted her name out in pain. So did Lavoisin. When the questioned separately, the Inquisition chief Nicolas Reyne became alarmed by the deep water into which his investigation was leading him. He reported to the king. Shocked, Louis ordered that any documents mentioning Athena should be delivered to him personally. He burnt the incriminating papers with his own hands, not realizing that the police kept files and copies. Lavoisin and some 30 others were burnt alive. After that, the king ordered that the sittings of the special courts set up to deal with her coven should be suspended, and that those still in the custody should be kept in prison without further trial. Guillabourg and a number of others spent the rest of their lives in dungeons. Better that, I guess, than being burned alive. I don't know. No action was taken against Athena. She continued to live at Versailles, and the king treated her with a distant courtesy and never went near her again. He replaced her with Françoise Scarron, a widow brought in by Athena years before to look after her children. For her services in bringing up his illegitimate children, Louis had made her Marquise de Maintenon and given her an estate near Chartres. She was a pious Christian, and no doubt Louis felt safe with that. Especially after what he learned about Athena. Though her flittering career was over, Athena stayed on at Versailles, and for some years to be near her children as they grew up. She retired in her country estate, and no more was ever heard of her. She died in 1707 at the ripe old age of 66. However, her hold over Louis never failed entirely, even after her death. When Louis lay dying at the age of 77, he made an extraordinary will which effectively disinherited his grandson, his own legitimate son having died of smallpox a few years before, and put political power into the hands of the Duke of Maine, his illegitimate son of Athena. However, after his death, the Parliament of Paris nullified his instructions. That is an example of total supernatural influence over an individual, reaching into the highest echelons of government. And I think that is ongoing today. Montespan was a master witch, even though she utilized the techniques of other witches in coven and all the alacrities thereof to bring influence over her lover, to establish herself with the strength and the power of influence to gain riches. And people will do anything for it. People will do anything to get rich and powerful. And they'll do anything. They'll have their own radio show, just like the Pentacle-Hours from 5 to 7. But I won't do anything to just have my radio show. I just enjoy radio and I enjoyed television in regards to informative knowledge building potential in philosophy and magical expertise in occult power. However, I don't really sit around and watch a lot of just regular nonsense. Although I write nonsense all the time. I write just weird sitcoms and silly dark comedies and things like that. Like my Star-Crossed Vampires project, which is going to be more conducted and more filmed this coming Saturday, I'm hoping so. It's so hard to get everybody together. Everyone is very busy, especially as we enter into Saturnalia time. But, it's Carpe Noctem. It's time to wrap up the year and get some things done and stage for, the new year. 2013 has definitely been a roller coaster ride. There's been a lot of activity in 2013. I will miss it. I liked all of these past few years. They've been wonderful. The people I've been meeting are awesome. And I'm hoping it just continues on its way. His wife answered, and her tone expressed nothing. Her face looked tight, as if she were holding herself in control. But it did not show what she thought. Mary went forward a pace, then stopped again. Is it a plague? She asked. I don't know. What is it, do you? She flung the question suddenly as something she could not hold back. There was misery in it, and it drew Mary forward again, and filled with quick sympathy for her sister-in-law that she did like. Jane, she said quietly, what is it? Let hell take you. It was Isabel, and her voice rose to a scream as she rushed suddenly forward. Knocking Jane aside and then hurling herself at Mary, she came like one possessed, maddened so that she had lost all control and she was not to be avoided. Mary indeed was so taken by surprise that she did not even move. She did not understand it, did not know what was happening. She did not even realize until Isabel was upon her as a scratching fury, and her only thought was that the woman had gone insane. Then she found herself leaping back, pushing out wildly in her hands as Isabel's fingernails came tearing at her face and forehead. She felt her skin break, and then her whole face seemed to be tinging and smarting, while she was still too unawares to know what was best to do. Then, of course, help came. A man leapt forward, and he seemed to make only a single movement to get behind Isabel and have her by the wrists. For a moment she struggled helplessly, squealing in frustrated fury and seeming beyond all reason. Then she went limp in his hands, grasping and beginning to moan as Jane came hurrying to her, looking frightened and bewildered. Now behave yourself, said the man. And for a moment he shook her with a force that set her grasping again. No more of it, or I will hurt you the way you won't like. What's to come over you, the woman said. He released her, then thumped his knee into her back to send her lurching into Jane, who had both arms around her at once. Isabel began to cry. It's all right, she grasped. We're safe. I've bloodied her. She certainly did. Her nails had been sharp, and Mary, panting now, was dabbing with a handkerchief at the blood that seemed to cover her face. She tried to be calm, and the man went hurrying to her. It's nothing, she told him. Is she mad? Above the breath, said Isabel, and Will spun in all potence round to stare at her. What, he answered, are you saying? But he knew what she was saying, and so did Mary. All who knew anything of witchcraft were agreed that the best way, perhaps the only way, to break a spell was to take the blood from the witch's face above the nostrils, It must be done by a victim of the spell, and it was certainly what Isabel had been doing. She thought she was bewitched as well as the man, and that Mary had done it, and now she had sought this sure protection. Now, is that true? Can you attack the very witch that you think that is bewitched you? In old times, they did. In old times, and direct action is a good way to handle things if you feel that you've been hexed or cursed. Definitely, if you can trace the line or look at the motive. There's a lot of weird, odd motives behind, in today's culture, why people are putting spells on one another. Definitely sowing dissension out of jealousy, but really more for their own vanity than anything. Not really even being able to be present. If you're into this type of thing, they're just casting spells because they feel slighted in some way. And that's the best way to handle it. But some of it is done for such petty reasons. A lot of pettiness is going on in the culture, and it bleeds over to people that are into the practice of witchcraft and into a lot of other activities thereof, even psychic influencing and so on. But if you do feel that someone is giving you the evil eye, a good way to handle it probably is to attack the witch directly and to, usurp her by bloodying her some way. But it's, is there really a good effect to that? Does it really, have an answer to the question of whether the curse will be lifted? Probably not, because the person will more than likely just go right back, even if the hex is broken, and begin to re-hex you all over the place. And I mean, murder is kind of out of the question. I mean, we can't, literally, what do you have to do? And murder has happened. Murder has happened, a lot in America and throughout the world over these type of things. People think they are jinxed, and, they take this stuff very seriously, especially in olden times. I mean, if you took out a guy's crops, if they thought their crops failed because of your activities, they were coming for you. And in cases throughout the United States, and I could go into different cases, and there was one in Pennsylvania, and there's been many in England and many throughout the world, where people were found and brought out and, wrung and quartered and burned or stabbed with like pitchforks and all kinds of bizarre things. I mean, it's one thing to just go after your, hexer. And, there are ways, there are other defensive ways to block hexes, especially to the unbeknownst actions of one, to sow dissension or to break up something or to ruin their job or to take something from them or take their lover from them or whatever jealous intention there is. There is a way to set up boundaries and cardinal points and deflections, like putting mirrors reversed on windows and so on, and burning certain candles during the day and so on, that will uplift your energy level in order to build a psychic barrier of magical power against other magical intention. Now, I'm going at this as, people are a believer. Typically, if you're listening to this radio program, being the Pentacle-Hours between 5 and 7, broadcasting from the Chicago area, then I'm presuming that you're already in the know of kind of the generalities of how witchcraft works. So, I'm just taking it from that level without getting into re-explaining some other, things over and over that have been tired and true. But to protect oneself from spells, there are a lot of different techniques that can be found other than just, duly attacking your person. And oftentimes, if you're attacking someone, you're probably attacking the wrong person, or you yourself have been affected. And this has happened to me. I have been overwrought and had spells put on me that has made my behavior shift from time to time and do things. And it happens because that is what these other people and their intention, that's what they want to happen. So it's only later that, if you're into this kind of thing, that you can identify it, and no one is immune. And there are no occult experts, and I'm not saying I am. This is a learning process, and I'm just enhancing my mind. And as I said, this is what I'm into. I don't really go and punch iron plates in an industrial complex. I'm not really working my fingers to the bone. I was in New York last night, took advantage of a plane ticket I had, and came back today just to have a discussion of witchcraft with some friends. And we were talking about this very subject. And they were saying, kind of like putting it down. They think witchcraft is a joke. And I didn't really defend it or anything about it. But I said, if you are a victim of it, you're never going to know. If your brake lines go out, or if something happens to you, or there's dissension in your relationship, or whatever that may be, or you've lost right at the 11th hour that deal that you thought you were going to get, you'll never know that it's magic or Satanism or whatever kind of projection that's happening until you're a victim of it. And then you may have a clue in your back of your mind, especially if it's ongoing. If your luck is just continuing down the same precipice and nothing is going right for you, you're constantly putting something out there, but your results aren't gaining or garnering you anything. You might want to look at that. You might want to look at what's happened in your life or who you've encountered. And, you may even be under some kind of ancestral curse or under a curse from just some regular triviality projection that has gone on during your lifetime. And it's happened to me. And I know it's happened to me because I'm in the arena, so I can, analyze it and find it through certain divination tools, tarot cards and runes and so on. And you can locate where it's coming from, and you kind of just go down the list. And then you realize what you need to do or try to banish it. And sometimes you need to go outside the box in order to banish it. And it's very hard to admit to oneself that you found flaw. It's very hard from even a societal standpoint. No one wants to be a failure, or no one wants to be flawed, or no one wants to admit the error of their ways. And that is an imperative aspect of realization when it deals with cursing or being under a hex. You have to come to the acceptance that it's happening to you. You have to overcome your ego and say, oh, no, it's not real. And that's just so random, and that's causality and all these different things. Well, if you're getting intuitions, even though, as I said earlier, intuitions can be manipulated, but they, 80% can be followed, but, they can also be manipulated as well by someone who, possibly has planned it out. So they're messing with your intuition as well as hexing you and hexing whatever because they have nothing better to do, or they have some intention on the back end. They've seen some future for them that is going to interfere with your future, and they want the two futures to merge together, and that is the intention that they will bring about. And some have brought great success, and I've seen it in my own life, and I've tried to prevent it and build barriers of protections and draw things back and so on, and there are banishments that can take place. But you have to start from the area of flaw. And it's like with anything else. I mean, if you know that you're not paying attention to detail at the job, you have to reanalyze the work, and you have to start from page 1 to see, how you can fix it. In too soon, the croon mesmerized. I cut you from my sight. Still everywhere you appeared, my desultory daemoness of June. The henbane and nightshade was in full bloom. Your ghost was a graceful current. I hung you like an ornament, satanic thrust at traditional modes of speculation. It discovers the ultimate realm of reality. Yet Satanism is ever conceivable, but not knowable, and that even the subtlest human intelligence could never pierce the veil of Lucifer. Satanism is an ancient spell of ego, will, and paradox, intoxications of absolutes. I wrote that last night on the airplane on my way back to Chicago. Or no, not last night, this morning. What am I saying? my days and nights are blurring together, which is always fun if you want to be a jet setter, whatever it is. And it's, just taking advantage of tickets before they expire, really. A lot of good feedback on the Pentacle-Hours show. I'm uploading the shows nightly so people can still listen to them if you cannot catch me live from 5 to 7 here at QUE4.org streams and AM 17. It's been a lot of fun. Not really work for me. It's just kind of natural abrogation of current, events in my life spanning from 1677 all the way up to about 1820. So I guess that's as current as we want to go. No, I'm just kidding. I do speak of events in 2014 as well. And there is obviously the crazy zaniness going on in 2014, but not really anything that nobody in our current culture doesn't already know about. When you're in Google-fied reality, every news bulletin is up in 5 seconds and read and thrown out within a few more seconds, and we only get our news from about 3 or 4 separate streams in the vast internet expanse, which is fascinating to me as how they've been able to codify humanity into going just to their MSN and Yahoo pages. But that is where pretty much everyone gets their news and information. And they are putting out all of the other thousands of different individuals that ever did reporting or news agency type of activity throughout the world. They don't really go to those people anymore. Those people are losing their jobs as print media is eradicated. Very similar to what I was speaking about the condition of the current bookseller world. Why print media is going out is because people just simply aren't paying for it. It was offered for free by these major corporations, being MSN and Yahoos and so on and so on, which are probably under the absolute umbrella of some ultimate corporation. And they were able to offer this media for free and still are because of their campaign, which is a campaign to drive all other media sources out of business. They had the staple, for example, if you take MSN as a massive corporatism Illuminati, with Bill Gates as their leader. Not so much now. Bill's kind of mellow. And I wrote a funny comedy screenplay about Bill Gates called Where is Bill Gates? And it talks about him being abducted and not wanting to go back to his regular life. And it's funny because these two anarchists abduct Bill and they put him in a room and he's like, yeah, I just want to forget the marriage and the corporation and just ride a motorcycle around the country. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like Easy Rider meets Bill Gates and running from the FBI, with his captors so he doesn't have to go back to his corporate Illuminati reality. But I'm deviating. MSN was able to progress in their global media takeover, and which is still progressing, just simply because they had the baseline standard of creating all of the different software and apps and so on. Through that supportive thing, they were printing, or not even printing, but releasing free news through their websites, even though they are paying for it. But it's called content through different RSS feeds, and you can research all that, which are interesting. RSS feeds go around and they hunt for information and codify them and then rewrite them. It's almost done by a massive cognition computer, and they put out all the media themselves. And whereas if you have a print media outlet, for example, like the Chicago Tribune, which is in stages of decay and Chapter 13 and bankruptcy and series of things, because they can't sell a newspaper. They can't sell a newspaper, and that is how print media is supported. It is very similar to, from a writing standpoint, If you're a writer and can't sell books, you can't be supported. I don't fall into that realm. I don't live off my writing. I live off my screenwriting, which is great, but it's only because I made that happen. But I've diversified myself, and I retired a long time ago, like 10 years ago. In and out. I mean, things have been up and down, but I also have a whole career with my personal doing readings for people and giving them clues and intuitions, and I'm not a charlatan. And you often hear me speak of charlatans, people that are just telling people what they want to hear, selling them down the road, and then putting a curse on them, and then making those people subjected to whatever they're doing. There's those scams going on all the time. But I think print media is probably going to go out of existence here shortly. Unless they legalize marijuana and it becomes so cheap that they can print paper again, where it just is cool again, where you can have, all kinds of different outlets, but you're not paying through the nose for your production costs. Whereas if you have just regular pulp paper out of a tree, which is just kind of counterintuitive to humanity. I've always thought it was that we're chopping down the very things that we get our air supply from in order to print things on and build things. It's kind of stupid. But that's the nature of mankind and its incursal inverted reality. But I believe, and when I was speaking with people in regards to marijuana, that they can grow a whole field of this marijuana and they can gain and garner more pulp from a field of marijuana than an entire forest of trees. And you don't have to be a marijuana smoker. I'm not a marijuana smoker. But to understand that makes more sense. That makes a lot more sense than cutting down the very fabric essence of where you're getting your air from. And another counterintuitive thing that humanity has been up to lately, that I was actually on the fence about in 2014, since we're discussing current issues, is this fracturing of our planet through hydroelectric issues, hydrofracturing. Hydraulic fracturing, fracking. These are spiders. They're spiders that are spun into the earth, dug down into a shale aspect of where our earth is, and then they drill out miles, about 2 miles. I call them spiders. So, like, you'll have these fracking spiders installed throughout, and they're going in all over our planet, targeted by satellites. And what's occurring, and this is kind of weird, obviously, they pump in tons of water, loosen up the shale, and people think, oh, great, we can get all this natural gas. And, from natural gas, we're going to be, in the green and stuff. That's how, I thought it was a good idea. I was like, okay, we are drilling in the earth anyway. We do get our oil there. We are living off these fossil fuels. But then I started to research it. And I started to really look at it, and the amount of expenditure, and I'm not a bleeding heart, and I was looking at this, and the amount of expenditure required of energy in order to create these spiders, these 2 mile parameter devices that are doing hydraulic fracturing, is amazing. The amount of water and the contaminants they're using in order to fracture the shale, which is a kind of a priority to them to keep secret, is contaminating the water forever. So you can't clean that water, you can't drink that water. And it also affects the water table underneath the earth, which is vital to freshwater resources for us. So we have all of that going on. We have all this contamination going on, but plus we're breaking up the earth in this way that's completely not necessary. I think with a fraction of the money that they're using to frack things apart, they could probably by now, whoever they are, being these major corporations that are, having the money to spend, whoever they are, probably, or, your pseudo oil companies, could create new technology for a fraction of the cost, even for the one of these spiders that are going in the earth and fracturing it up and, pilfering off the natural gas. And, really, in the great sound of things, when I first thought about fracking, I didn't think it was that big a deal. But the problem is that there is methane under there. Methane is deadly to an environment. It is deadly in combination with carbon dioxide. So as you loosen up this shale rock, you're also releasing a lot of these contaminants in the earth that need to stay in the earth. They go up in the atmosphere and they never go away. And they work with the carbon dioxide and they literally vaporize our ozone in our atmosphere. The Earth can survive nuclear events. We're constantly bombarded with nuclear radiation. People don't realize that, but everything we're using and everything around us, we're constantly saturated with radiation. We're kind of radioactive creatures. And our planet is radioactive. It likes radiation. I don't know what's going on with radiation. We're permeated by cosmic rays and all these things. It can survive those kind of things. We can sort of survive those kind of things. However, when you eradicate the actual atmosphere through methane release and, which is doubling every day, tens of thousands of these spiders are in the earth fracturing it open and releasing these toxins into the atmosphere, you are creating a catastrophic event that sooner or later will just vaporize the entire atmosphere and turn our planet more like into Mars. And I don't think we want to turn into Mars because that's exactly what happened to Mars. They had events where through their volcanic eruptions went up and vaporized their atmosphere, and now hence you have this dead red planet that's saturated with carbon dioxide. And the planet Earth is going that direction as we speak. That's something to kind of contemplate. And it was something that I didn't really give any credence to, until only recently, till recent research, that I was like, hey, this might just be very destructive to our planet, this hydraulic fracturing that's going on. And if they put up enough of these wells, these drilling spiders into the earth that go out like 2 miles in parameter, and they're pumping in all of this odd water that has these contaminants in it that they don't reveal because it's their prioritized property. That it's a secret. They don't even reveal it to like when the administration comes looking. Then it's something to be concerned about. I am Winter Lake. This is the Pentacle-Hours broadcast from 5 to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, the middle of the road time, crossroad time, from the Wicker Park, Logan Square Loop area of Chicago, Illinois. We broadcast live, so I'm live. And I get to talk to you, and you can talk to me too at wolfloki@yahoo.com. WOLFLOKI @yahoo.com or winterlake.com. And if you'd like a reading or something, or a dream interpretation or some kind of supernatural discussion, I'm open to having one. And it's been fun over the past few weeks talking with various people and just some of the different interludes and having this outlet for my expression and my work and to garner my opinion. And I'm not saying that my opinion is of this station or the opinion of anyone that I know. It is just my personal opinion. And I even hate the word opinion. And I hate the word critic. I think they're just kind of scapegoats, that they're really not an expression of a philosophic standard. I am a tad bit of an intellectual, but I'm not an egoist and I'm not an arrogant prick, like a lot of different people in this genre regime, witchcraft, whatever reality that, I'm kind of into. And I run into it quite a bit. And it's like, whose cock is bigger or something. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Some of these people, and girls do it too. It's always a challenge. Sometimes when I go out
I get into these discussions and somebody wants to bring up some kind of thing, or, they try to rub each other the wrong way, and I need to get away from that. It gets to be a tad too confrontational. And I realize that nothing can be gained by winning. You can win or say some nonsense, but really you're just losing the person, or you're not even on the same page with that person, at least not in that space-time. Maybe at a later time or a previous time, but it generally, it's kind of skewed. And just like when I was in New York last night, this woman wants to challenge the whole aspect of my belief system and attacks it from an atheistic standpoint. And I said that you can't really, get into a battle with atheism. Atheism is their own road. They're denying the hand in front of their face. They're denying their own existence, although they worship their own existence. It's self-worship, in my opinion. When I told her that, she got really angry. But that's what I view atheism as, because atheism is saying there is no life after death, that, it is here and now, or so on and so on, and that's fine. That's where your mind begins and ends. It's just a matter of differing aspects of what you're open to, or different, realities in your own mentality. Where for me atheism doesn't exist is basically the REM aspects of our own mind, and the imperceptible, limitless aspects of the potential of the psyche. It's hard for me to be an atheist knowing that my mind can perceive supernatural experience. And, in discussing with this atheist, I said, but you're dreaming, you're seeing these other things. And she's like, well, that's imagination. And I said, well, imagination is the palace of wisdom, but don't you think there is something behind that? Isn't there a painter to the image? Isn't there a reality to our nature, that is garnering more of an existence than an atheistic aspect, that we deny all existence, that when death is finite and that it's all absolute, and, it's kind of an empty existence. So for me personally, atheism doesn't work. And wasn't trying to convert this person. I don't really seek to convert anyone to my ideology, or even try some passive-aggressive game of like, I'm going to tell you this to pull you into this. I try not to do that either. And then she's like, oh, you're being passive-aggressive and stuff, in the way that, she felt baited or something. I was like, no, I'm expressing how I feel, in that argument. And I know she's listening, and I'm kind of just going back into it because it's just fresh in my memory. It just happened a few hours ago. Because it's, for me, one-dimensional existence is too limited from the just sheer perception that I've experienced. So I've kind of walked on the water and been able to go through it and had results, and from intention and so on and so on, through black magic projection. A person who is an atheist really doesn't really see results. All they see is a solid chalkboard with nothing written on it, or, denying the hand in front of their face, and so on and so on. And they get really offended. Well, this person did, when you go, well, when did this atheism start? Or what occurred with you that atheism was your path? And typically, it happens when death encounters their life. And this person was very similar about that. When death is encountered in their life, it brings a great doubt. Now, I am a doubter. I am a naysayer. I'm a person that, likes to out charlatanism and so on. But death is something that I think that will be overcome in the future. Many people are calling it transhumanism. I call it a satanic singularity, just the creator being surpassed by the created. We have, hence, computers a perfect example. A computer has more thinking power than our own brain, or soon will, and so on and so on. So I'm just giving you a reference as we are the creator, we have created something that surpasses us. And this person didn't really want to get into death or to discuss death. and the experience that death can bring, because of the uncomfortable nature as to, hey, life is very short, and you never know when things are going to end or what is there at the end. And you'd have to be into kind of an acceptance of a supernatural nature to even know that death occurs. So I will probably over the next couple of days be touching in the Pentacle-Hours from 5 to 7, a little bit about death and my experiences with death and where it begins and ends for me, and how I've seen it occur in the world, and how even a great rapture may occur for us on our own planet, which has been predicted over and over thousands of times by many heretics and whatever they are. So that should be interesting. But I am Winter Lake, and you can reach me at winterlake.com. And we have concluded our program, and I hope you have a wonderful day.